What's up, everybody? What a day. What a day. I was planning on doing some intros into some new cases to see how you guys felt about them. Honestly, not really ripe in the coming weeks and months like we usually like to jump in on a case, but there are some that we're following along for when the trial happens or when it all culminates, and we will be there to hit it. But as often happens in the law, something happened today that we have to talk about, and that is the Nicholas Cruz Parkland shooting sentencing hearing, I guess we'll call it. It was the penalty phase trial that Nicholas Cruz won in order to get life in prison. Kind of an interesting way to describe all of that and say all of that out loud. Doesn't seem like it makes much sense, but if you've been following, you understand that's how it works in Florida. He pleads guilty, admits what he did, admits that he is guilty of these intentional homicides plus all these other crimes. They go to trial. The state seeks the death penalty. Jury comes back as not unanimous. We find out maybe it was 11-1, maybe it was 9-3. And here we are. Everybody is mad about that. Everybody is outraged that the death penalty did not happen in this case. Even officers of the court that want everybody to respect the rules and decorum of the courtroom, respect the law, submit to the law, even if sometimes you don't agree with it in these situations, the rules of evidence, the jury rules and procedures, what happens in that jury room. We all dislike and disagree with things that happen in trials and in the courtroom and in cases all the time. And there are different ways to deal with it. And sometimes they are dealt with very inappropriately. And I really just think it was worth talking about today. So if you're here for Nicholas Cruz and you want to talk Nicholas Cruz, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. After we talk Nicholas Cruz, we are going to talk about the Delphi mystery case and where it's at and what we know and how it's kind of strange what we don't know and how I think that's going to affect the trial that's supposed to happen on March 30th of 2023, which I think is about impossible. But we'll talk about that at the end, and we'll save the Sarah Boone suitcase stuff a little later. Bodie, I see your question. We are going to get to that, but we are going to watch some clips so we can see exactly how the exchange went down between the court and these defense attorneys. So to set the stage, the victims were very upset. They have every right to be. Every single person in this chat, myself included, is on team victims. We support these victims. We hate the injustice that occurred, that these lives were taken far too soon, brutally, by a horrible monster. We all agree with that. Some of us may have voted for the death penalty. Some of us may not have. Some of us may think life is worse than the death penalty, a worse punishment. Some people in the chat think that he wanted the death penalty. Many of us in the chat did not appreciate or like the way that defense counsels handled this case. Some of the arguments they made, some of the gestures they made, it was unbecoming at times. I disagreed with it at times. And I think that that's okay for us to disagree with that and not like the way that they did their job. But I hope that all of you that follow these kinds of cases and are interested in this kind of channel and this kind of discussion, we're a niche group, right? A couple thousand of us get together and talk about these cases. And I think we all understand that if it were us, if it was our loved one, our son, our brother, our dad, whatever, and they're accused of a crime, we would want their constitutional rights to be protected. We would want lawyers to fight hard for them and to do everything ethically and morally possible to win this case. Betsy is a new subscriber. What's up, Betsy? So when we talk about constitutional rights, protections, right to a defense, we have to understand that sometimes it's going to be things that we don't like. But that doesn't just happen on the defense side. Sometimes prosecutors do things we don't like. Sometimes plaintiffs' lawyers in civil cases or defense lawyers in civil cases do things that we do not like. But there are rules that we have to stick to. And there are certain things we know as lawyers or judges that aren't really going to affect anything. So why play by the rules, right? And I think that that's what happens a lot of times when people get annoyed or frustrated at law enforcement, when they used to sometimes just do things and go unchecked before we had cell phones and before we held them accountable for certain things. Because there are bad law enforcement officers. There are some great ones too. But there's no doubt that people abuse power. And usually it happens when they think, nobody's going to find out, or nothing's really going to matter, nothing's really going to change from this. And I think that's where we got where we were today, where we have this sentencing, this opportunity for victims to say what's on their heart and mind, express how they feel about what happened to their family member or their friend, look at the defendant, tell him how they affected their lives or how the defendant affected their lives, especially a defendant that said, I want the victims to choose my sentence. All fair game. And pretty much, I would say almost anything they say about Nicholas Cruz is fair game. What's not fair game and should never be fair game, and if you think it's fair game, we could have a bit of a disagreement, which is fine on this channel. I like having disagreements and discussing this. If you think they should be able to go after any defense lawyer or their children or the judge or the judge's children, you are sadly mistaken on how the court system is supposed to run. These people have lives. This is their job, especially these lawyers that are public defenders and appointed to this case. So if you don't have any money and this lawyer gets appointed to your case and they throw it because they don't want the victims to hate them or they don't want the public to hate them, how would you feel about that? People think that about the public defender sometimes already. So allowing this to go on in the courtroom is horrible on how it could be used going forward. And Christopher will talk about that. That's fine. That's fair. And we can talk about that. But let's watch some of the exchange. And again, I don't think it was blatant threats to their children, but bringing their children into the fold and talking about the lawyers personally, to me, is out of bounds. And the prosecutor even reads what is supposed to be admissible in these situations. So let's watch part of it together here. Let me fix the speakers first. All right, here we go.
I'm sorry? To when we're not in recess to make an objection? When we're in recess to make an objection?
I can do it now, Judge. With all due respect to the victims' families and the proceedings in Marcy's law, the defense team in this case followed and maintained their constitutional duty, the Sixth Amendment right to provide effective representation to Mr. Cruz. This is a constitutional right that is afforded to every criminal defendant in the system. The court is aware, and so is the state, of Marcy's law and the victims' rights that are afforded in the United States Constitution as well as the Florida Constitution. That does not include personally attacking defense counsel and our children. The defense reached out to the state, and this is me specifically, in anticipation that something like this might happen. I understand that the victims' families are entitled to feel however they want to feel and are allowed to say whatever it is they want to say. But in the court of law, it is the court's responsibility to maintain the administration of justice. And you know the parameters of a sentencing hearing. The state knows the parameters of a sentencing hearing. I have spoken in email to Mrs. McCann. Mr. Weeks has spoken to the Chief Judge Tudor. And we have also spoken to Mr. Pryor in an effort to prevent this from happening. I did my job, and every member of this team did their job, Judge. And we should not personally be attacked for that, nor should our children. And I'm asking this court, as the administrator of justice, please ask the victims' families like I asked the state attorney's office to do. They know that this is improper. They know this. They know that attacking defense counsel, attacking the judicial system, and attacking the jurors is not permissible. And it sends a message to this community that if you sit as a juror and the verdict you're not in agreement with, that you will be chastised and you will be degraded. Our system of justice is designed the way that it was administered in this courtroom. If he would have gotten death, we would not have said one single word about that, and we would respect the jury's verdict. This is our system of government, Judge, and Your Honor should be maintaining the decorum in its courtroom to prevent these families from attacking our children and from attacking us personally when we were appointed on this case.
Oh, okay, your objection is noted.
So they were appointed on this case, which I think is very important. She is 100. I've been frustrated with her throughout the process. Okay. So I get it. I've absolutely been frustrated with her, and team has done some things I don't agree with, but she is 100% correct that if this has an effect on future jurors, that if you don't do what the victims want you to do, they're going to get to come in court in the public with the cameras on and trash you. And they're going to come and spit on our jury system and on our judicial system. And this is going to be totally okay with the judge, and the judge is going to allow this. And the judge dismisses it so quickly that it just shows the judge is on board with this. The judge thinks this is okay. The judge does not have a problem with this. And there's a lot more we're going to kind of listen to. I'm trying to get through it all in the time we have. So I sped it up a little bit. I'll do it at 1.25 speed. So just a little fast. All right, here we go.
Dave, do you want to?
Your Honor, before we call our next witness, I would like to put something on the record, if I may be allowed.
And this is important because we're going to talk about this. The state is going to put on the record on what's appropriate to discuss during sentencing. So let's listen to it together on what the state even argues is appropriate during sentencing. Because the state's basically like, they should be able to say whatever they want. These people, I can't believe she's trying to muzzle them.
Your Honor,
Okay.
and it is important. The defendant has taken the lives of these people's family members, their children, their husbands, their sons. And now the defense attorneys want to take the voice of the survivors, the victims, and curtail their rights under Florida law, specifically 941.143, the Florida Constitution, Section 16B, Article 1, which gives victims a right, Your Honor, to express themselves and be heard. They're also trying to curtail the victim's rights to speak under Chapter 960. And Ms. McNeil is right. She did reach out to me, and she did ask that we ask the victims not to speak about the verdict, about the case, but under 941.143, each and every one of these victims here today was apprised under the law by our office, which we had a duty to do, that statements, whether oral or written, shall relate to the facts of the case and the extent of any harm, including social, psychological, or physical harm, financial losses, loss of earnings directly or indirectly from the crime for which the defendant is being sentenced, and any matter relevant to an appropriate disposition and sentence. What these victims are here to talk about today, Your Honor, is an appropriate disposition and sentence. The defense cannot try and impose prior restraint on these victims who have every right to be here and exercise their freedom of speech under the First Amendment, under the Florida Constitution, and under Florida law, Chapter 943 and Chapter 960. And these victims have every right to express themselves. They were muzzled, they were curtailed under victim impact because they knew the instructions and they followed them to a T. And the defense knows that the state worked with the defense to make sure that everything on victim impact was admissible. There were no objections, and the record will bear that out. And Ms. McNeil knows that she and I met to make sure that victim impact was absolutely perfect under the law. And these victims now have a chance and a right to come in here and say what they're allowed to say and what they're legally allowed to say. What the defense is doing is illegal to try and curtail these victims' rights under the law, and it's unconscionable. These victims have a right to express themselves. I have not gone over what their statements are because under the law, under Chapter 960, they don't have to tell me what they're going to say. They can ask me if they need guidance, and I will provide it to them. But they have a right to address this court. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, State, you can go ahead and call your next witness.
We just need to say that the defense is not attempting to curtail the limits of the sentencing proceeding or the rights that the victim's families have. We are not trying to do that. But the state attorney's office knows that what is happening here is beyond what the victim's families are constitutionally protected to do. You can say whatever you want to Mr. Cruz. You can attack him and say whatever you want. But your honor knows that what is happening here is not permissible.
Ms. McNeil, stop suggesting that I know that something is impermissible and that I am allowing it to happen. You're finished. I've heard your objection. It's noted. Go ahead and call Ms. Ramsey.
Okay. So that's how the judge dealt with it. Stop suggesting that I realize something's inappropriate. This judge should know that any personal attacks on the defense lawyers, on the jurors, on the defense lawyers' families in court during the sentencing is inappropriate. It is not appropriate. Okay? But this judge also knows, like we said, lawyers and judges know certain things. This isn't going to affect anything. There's nothing to be appealed. There's nothing that anyone's going to do. What's Nicholas Cruz going to do? Appeal the sentencing hearing that he got life at? It was either life or death. So nothing is really going to be affected by this. So the judge is just allowing this to go on. But I understand a lot of you disagree with me. I totally understand. And emotionally, I feel like if we're going to have the death penalty in Florida, Nicholas Cruz seems like a great candidate. You will not get an argument from me there. But this is a bigger picture. Okay. And that's just why I want to talk about this a little bit. Okay. The bigger picture is allowing anybody to get up and talk about some lawyer whose job it is to practice law and represent criminal defendants who can't pay for representation, which are usually and some of the times the worst of the worst, because if you're going to prison for the rest of your life, it's tough to make money. It's tough to have money sometimes. And somebody said the judge was fantastic and professional. Totally disagree with you. I think she's totally unprofessional throughout this hearing. And we're going to see her double standard a little bit later. I thought she was fine during the trial. She, had some mishaps here and there, but I thought overall she was fine during the trial. I even really liked some of the things that she did. But to me, this was inappropriate. And again, muzzling the families, not at all. Say whatever you want about Nicholas Cruz. Actually, I even made a note. One of the guys that got up that they were complaining about, he argued that the defense counsel, it was inappropriate how they talked about mental health and how this guy is fine. And those arguments were baloney and there was nothing wrong with this guy. That's fine. If you want to talk about the arguments defense counsel made, if you want to talk about the facts in the case, the facts and the arguments in the case, that's 100% fair game. He was fine through the system. He had all the chances in the world. He didn't fall through the cracks. He had a mom who loved him. He had a family who loved him. And what did he do? He went and wrote this in blood and did that. I thought that was all fair game. Not personal attacks towards the jurors, towards the lawyers, towards their family. How would you like it, anybody, if somebody came to your office and let's say you work at McDonald's and they come there and they attack you personally and your boss just let them because, it's okay. They don't like people who eat McDonald's or eat meat or eat French fries or work in big corporate America or whatever it is. Just because that's your job. Now, let's throw a caveat in here, right? We are talking about in court, in the sentencing hearing, in the victim impact statements. We are not talking about the press conferences, which I think was totally fair game. What the families did in the press conferences, totally fair game. Talk about the lawyers if you want. Talk about their antics. Talk about how horrible it was. Fine. But it shouldn't be on the record in court. And there is a difference. And I think a lot of people maybe don't feel like there should be a difference, but there is. There really is a difference. So if you want to go and you want to trash the criminal defense lawyers or even trash the jurors, I mean, I think we should stand up for the jury system. There was a reason that juror did not vote for death. Now, if that juror does not believe in the death penalty, they should have never been on that jury. I'm on board with that 100%. They're disqualified if they just don't believe in it. But to me, there's no place for this in court. And here's where I really disagree with the judge's actions and how she treated the public defenders in this case, and especially the assistant chief public defender, who I don't remember doing anything inappropriate in the case. I didn't watch every second of it, so you guys can remind me if they do. But so the one blonde female defense attorney was rough. The defense attorney that shot the bird, kick her out of the courtroom. Okay, I'm with you there. But how about how she treated this assistant chief public defender, chief assistant public defender? Do you guys agree? I get all of you guys are saying it's pretty split. Some people are saying Bad judge. Some people are saying good judge. Some people are saying you're wrong, Peter. Some people are saying agree, Peter. That's okay. We're allowed to disagree, right? We need to have these conversations. All right, let's watch how things went with the chief assistant public defender. And you let me know if you still think that this was appropriate for how the judge acted.
I'm standing here and I see that Jeff Marcus jumped up really quickly. But no one jumped up when people were referring to karma acting in the universe. No one was jumping up when they were referring to the defense children. No one jumped up to try to tap down that rhetoric. That is the rhetoric that I'm talking about. That is what I'm trying to be very clear on. Jeff Marcus, the state, they can hide behind their arguments, but we all are witnessing what is occurring in this courtroom.
Which is myself. I'm a judge.
And
I understand that I'm in
Thank you,
charge
Judge.
of the decorum. And I feel that 99% or a great percentage of what has been said has been appropriate. Everybody has maintained decorum, but for a few comments, it's best to just move on as opposed to highlight them.
This is true, Judge, but I am witnessing a building of momentum, and I'm encouraging the court to direct the state to tap down on that momentum so it does not.
There's nothing wrong with this request. A lot of you will probably disagree with it. There's nothing wrong with this request. Let's just make sure it doesn't get worse. That's it.
Occur and it does not become a theme. Thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, for the record, the only thing the state has said to any of these witnesses when they get up is, would they like to say something on behalf of the victim they're representing? There's been no encouraging or inciting, as Mr. Weeks has put on this record. That is a blatant falsehood and a recreation of the record. As far as no objections being made, it's the defense that could have objected. It's not the state's duty to object to their own witnesses when they're testifying.
Okay. Listen, I've already heard. If you have anything else to say, you can put it in writing at a later time. I've heard from both sides more than once. That's going to be it. I've made my decision. Like I said, 99% of what's been testified to has been appropriate. I do not want to highlight the few things that were said that were perhaps not appropriate, and let's move on. You can have as many seconds as you want in writing, and you can put all of your objections in writing. They've been made multiple times from your chief assistant, from Ms. McNeil, and I don't want to hear anything else. I've already heard it. Is there something that has not already been argued? Okay, exactly what is it?
I know it's low. It's low on my end as well. I'll kind of recap what he said so you can hear it.
Mr. Marcus, Mr. Satz looked at the statement prior to the reading. And so their implicit adoption of what he was saying was improper arguments.
Okay, but what you are doing right now is highlighting something and making more of a spectacle. So if your office in general does not want to facilitate and or incite violence, then we need to just sit down and move on. That's it. There were 18 witnesses, 16 or 18 witnesses that testified today. There was nothing that was said until Ms. McNeil made her point made, and we're moving on.
But is the court going to do anything about maybe stopping it from happening again?
When these people are upset about specific things that have gone on from that table, like shooting the middle finger up at this court and laughing and joking, Ms. McNeil, be quiet.
Yeah, and they showed the clip of the middle finger, and somebody said, Adam asked, can she be held accountable for the middle finger? Absolutely, she can be held in contempt, and I think she should be held in contempt. It's horrible. You cannot possibly do that. You can't possibly do that in a trial. Whether it's a trial like this, of this magnitude, or just a normal trial, you cannot act like that in court. Frankly, I wouldn't care how severe the punishment was for that lawyer. She deserves everything that's coming to her, in my opinion.
When these people have sat in this courtroom and watched this behavior from that table, and they want to say that they're not happy about it, what is the problem?
Judge, I have no problem because I have thick skin. But once you bring in my children, I think that's highly improper to speak to the.
I didn't even know you have children. I don't know what you're talking about. Your children? What about your children?
But then to comment on my children is highly improper. Before this court to allow that kind of testimony
Okay.
is also.
I don't remember any comments about any children. And if there was, it obviously didn't, it came and went without me noticing it.
Judge, I can assure you that if they were talking about your children, you would definitely notice.
You need to sit down right now. You're out of line. In fact, you're excused. You need to go sit in the back with your chief public defender.
He's the public.
Mr. Weeks, please ask the lawyer from your office to go sit down and not say anything else. To try to threaten my children and bring up my children is inappropriate. Go to the back of the room now. That just.
Okay. So I hear people are now outraged on both sides. Okay, listen. Let's Sam was commenting on this exactly, and I agree, and I'll talk about it. And P-Hop, this is such a great chat. Respect to everyone for agreeing to disagree like adults. I agree. And we've got to keep that. And I'm about to put up a chat that somebody said I totally disagree, and we'll talk about that as well. But I don't necessarily think any of the victims threatened the lawyer's children, but they definitely talked about the lawyer's children and talked about the lawyers. It's inappropriate. I realize some of you disagree with me. Okay. I'm just giving my opinion here. And as soon as that lawyer said, if it were your children, I think you'd feel differently, the judge took that as a threat to her children and kicked him out of the room, basically. She just proved his point. Nobody in this courtroom should be talking about any of the people working in this courtroom today personally or about their children. The judge proved the defense lawyer's point. And that's all I'm saying here is you should not talk about the judge's children. Horrible move by this defense attorney. It's fine for her to kick him to the back of the room. 100%. Kick him to the back of the room. You can't do that stuff. You can't say that stuff about a judge. But that's all the defense attorneys were asking from the judge, right? That's the frustrating part to me is when it's you, it's different. When it's somebody else, they're public defenders. Pfft, they represent criminals. They represent murderers. It seems like this judge is along for that ride. And I don't think that that is great for a judge for criminal cases.
Violated about every rule of professional responsibility that I have never. If you're going to get up here and you're going to.
Judge, I asked you to go sidebar on this matter.
And there you go again. So that's the definition of professionalism. Judge, I asked you to go sidebar on this. The chief assistant public defender is like, we could have handled this privately, quietly, for nobody to hear. No threats would have been thrown. Look at her face. She is angry. He's like, Judge, I asked you to do this sidebar. You didn't let us do it sidebar. So that's why it's turned into this circus.
Sidebar or not, you don't have one of your assistant public defenders say something about my children?
Judge, that same venom that the court is expressing is the same venom that defense counsel had sit through this entire morning.
She brought up her children multiple times during the trial. Nobody knows if I'm barren or not. They don't know about my children.
Judge,
sit down. Sit down.
Judge.
Sit down, Mr. Weeks.
Please do not summarily dismiss me.
I'm summarily dismissing you. Go sit down.
I'm asking the court. I asked the court to go sidebar.
Go sit down. You don't threaten the
Judge,
court's children.
Everyone
Your
in this
assistant just
courtroom.
did that. Go sit down.
No one in this courtroom had to endure what we had to
Go
endure.
sit down. Miss McNeil has made her children a spectacle more than once during this trial. That was her choice. You have absolutely no right to have one of your assistants come up here and suggest something about my children. Now, please go sit down.
Judge.
You're inappropriate and out of line. Go sit down.
Judge, may I have a brief recess?
No. Go sit down.
May I have a brief recess so I can speak to my attorneys?
We're moving on with the sentencing, Mr. Weeks.
So I can have a brief recess?
No.
Thank you.
It's 1:36. Thank you.
And do you see how he eventually was like, okay, you're not going to give me a recess? Okay. And he went and sat down. I thought he handled it pretty professionally. I haven't seen him a lot in the trial. I don't know who he is or anything like that. I know he's the chief assistant public defender, but I think he tried to do it the right way, at least. My personal opinion. All right, let's get to where is the person that disagreed with me? Dang it. I'm having trouble with the comments here today. Jesse Greathouse. The judge isn't making arguments based on logic. She's just saying things like, let's just move on, go to the back of the room. It's weak. Rosie, the comment was about the judge more likely remarking if it were her kids. I don't understand where the threat part is. I mean, I agree, but that's exactly what the public defender said to the judge, and she said he threatened her kids. Steph, the family should not have been allowed to say negative comments about the jury. Defense is acting as though words hurt more than those families losing their children. Absolutely not. I mean, absolutely not. Is it that those words hurt more than the defense, than what happened to these children? Absolutely not. I agree with you there. It's much worse. But I just think telling the victims to keep it to Nicholas Cruz, keep it to the trial, keep it to the arguments made in trial, the facts made in trial, I don't think that would have been inappropriate or muzzling the victims. And again, they still have the press to talk to. Okay, I have to find this comment now, so bear with me for a second because it was a good disagreeing comment. I think we're close. I love a good disagreement, you know, can't pass up on a good disagreement. Here it is. Gara, I totally disagree. I cried with every parent. So it's okay for their kids, but not for theirs. The victims are not victims, but Cruz is a victim. And they got all those resources from us in Broward. I agree with you 100% that every single one of these families went through things they should never have to go through. I agree with you in crying with each one of them. I agree with you that Cruz is not the victim here. He's getting life in prison. He will never get out. His life, he does not going to live a good life here. I agree. I feel like the death penalty is in place for a case like this. I don't know how many different ways I can say that. That is not at all what I am not disagreeing with the sentiment here at all. And I want to be as clear as possible with that. I am not disagreeing with this sentiment. And that's why I wanted to make sure this got up there because Gara 21 is absolutely correct. All right, let's get to a couple more questions here. Rach, I know it's far, April, I think, but will you follow the Othwal Wallace case out of Daytona? I don't know anything about that, but the best way to get a case onto this channel is post it on the community page. And if a bunch of people like that when we ask for suggestions, that'll be the next one on the list. Gabrielle Garcia, I do believe she failed to remain impartial to both sides as the judge. I agree. But the whole middle finger thing, attorneys should be above that 100%. And the judge should reprimand that attorney. She could even report her to the Florida bar. The Florida bar should either sanction, disbar, make her go to PR, professional responsibility classes. Absolutely. There are things in place to deal with those situations. Ruthless, she needs to shadow Darrow. June Sidlauskis, can the way the judge is handling the situation, could this cause a reason for appeal on the defense side? No, that's the point. Appeal what? Right? They won the penalty phase trial. He's getting life. He already pled guilty. This has nothing to do with the plea. So it's not really going to affect the outcome, which is the interesting part of this and why I think the judge kind of just is letting it fly. AK-47 Mal, did you see the first objection from the defense at 2:06:29? I did not. Let me see. 2:06. I don't really have it set up right. Let me see if I do this. 2:06:29. Oh yeah, we played that one, AK-47 Mouth. We played that one at the beginning of the video. So check that out. Steph Morris, why are the families being sworn in prior to making their statements? They got to tell the truth. You know, you're in court. It's on the record. Got to tell the truth. Misty, did you see the juror interview threats? I only saw one of the juror interviews that we watched together that he said it was 11 out of 12 or wanted death, but there was one holdout and she convinced a couple others. I absolutely think these jurors are going to deal with that. Absolutely. I mean, look at that. That's why we don't want to foster this type of stuff, attacking people personally that are not Nicholas Cruz. Attack him till the cows come home, okay, for what he did. Brutalize him with your words in court and how he makes you feel all day long. You're not going to hear an argument there, but not these jurors, not the children of the criminal defense lawyers, which a lot of people don't have sympathy for criminal defense lawyers, and I get that. Alexis Boland, I would have loved to see Judge Ascarati would have dealt with this case. This case had so much disrespect inside of the courtroom. I agree. I did not enjoy watching this case. I did not enjoy it one bit. A-Care, OT, will you be reviewing Amber Heard's stateless pleadings at all? I saw a little bit about that. I don't know if it's worth a whole video. It's interesting argument against diversity of citizenship, because if you don't actually have a state that you are domiciled in or basically live in, can you really be in diversity of citizenship? And there's an argument that you can't. So We'll see. If you guys are interested in it, let me know on Instagram and Twitter at Tragos Law. And if enough of you guys are interested in me breaking that down, I'll do a video on it. Azam, Peter, bad behavior from a lawyer in court can be held in contempt, right? Yes. How about bad behavior from a judge? So they can get reprimanded. They can have their license suspended. They can be disbarred. I don't think any of that rises to this level. I don't think the judge took it that far. I think she is emotional. I think it was a really tough trial. I think she probably might need some time off after this or whatever. I think it's really tough. I don't really blame her for how she feels. And I don't necessarily disagree with how she feels and being frustrated with defense counsel or this defendant. So, none of that really is why we're hating on the judge. It's really understand what's fair, understand how you felt when somebody's just mentioning your kids. That's how these lawyers feel. They are lawyers, sworn lawyers and officers of the court doing their job that they're appointed. They have to do, basically. I mean, if I took this case, I would choose to take this case. I could see why people might be a little bit more frustrated with me than them. They were appointed for this. Jay Carr, laughing and carrying on in court with Cruz in front of the parents who cannot laugh with their children is beyond disgraceful. The defense attorneys need some discipline. Jay Carr, I'm fine with that. I'm fine if they get disciplined. I'm fine. There are processes in place to discipline them if what they did was out of line. And I do think some of the stuff that, especially the middle finger laughing that we saw, I agree with you. Beth Vonderhulst, I agree with you. No death penalty is at the heart here to me. Everyone, including the judge, is taking out their anger against Cruz not being sentenced to death on the defense counsel. I agree. JP, this is supposed to be a solemn hearing to honor the victims. The judge turned it into a spectacle and made it about herself. The family should not have been exposed to this. The judge is unprofessional. Sidebar would have fixed this, right? Just handle this at a sidebar. Neek 3T. I don't understand why people get mad over him being executed, over him living his whole life in a cage. What do you think is more sufferable? Again, and people disagree with that. And it's not like he's going home. It's not like he's being set free, right? That is part of it. He is getting punished. Now, a lot of people wanted it to be worse, or at least what they felt was worse, and that's okay, and we can have those discussions. But the point is where it's targeted, right? Miss Jacqueline, it's a very emotional case. Judge get emotional too. Absolutely. And I think it's great to point that out. Brianna, in my middle-agedness, I have lost all sympathy for defense attorneys who behave like that woman. I'm 100% in the judge's corner here. Defense lawyers are needed, and I admire most, but these, no, I'm over their outrage. Okay? I hope people can see it as, their job. I mean, it is their job to represent people like Nicholas Cruz. And if nobody will represent him, then where are we in our system? And some of you, I think, maybe would like it to be there, but some people are wrongfully accused of certain things, right? We have to understand that as well. Not Nicholas Cruz. Audra, jurors and the lawyers, especially court-appointed, should be hands-off. These people yelling at them likely paid their salaries to fight this. That's not a bad point. Gara, thank you for the super sticker. Dr. Aisha Musa, thank you for the super sticker as well. Camila, I wrote a paper for my CJ Masters last month about this judge losing her emotional control. I guess I'll have to update. I think you will. Cat's Crazy Life. This judge and Brooks would be quite the show. I wonder how she would handle Daryl Brooks. I haven't even thought about that. That's really, really interesting. All right, let's transition here real quick. We've talked a lot about that. Wasn't even supposed to be today. But let's jump into this Delphi mystery here, okay? Let's talk about, and I'll get to more of your questions that come through, and we'll talk more about that. But this Delphi case is really interesting. I didn't know anything about it. 2017, 5 years ago, 2 girls go missing. They end up that it turns into a homicide, and they've been searching for their killers all along. And just recently, they have arrested defendant with the last name Allen. And all we really know is a few weeks ago, neighbors saw law enforcement at his house, searching his house, coming out with bags of clothes. They towed his car. They dug up some holes in the backyard with a metal detector, but they're not releasing what they found, how they caught him, how they connected him to this murder, the probable cause that the judge agreed with. He is being charged with 2 counts of murder, but we don't really know what's connecting it. And that's why it's kind of still a mystery, which to me is very interesting. Why are they hiding this? Well, we find out that they think there are more people responsible and they don't want to let the information out that they know as to how they caught the defendant Allen, because maybe if they did, it would let somebody shield themselves or hide from law enforcement in being caught as the second defendant, co-defendant, co-conspirator in this case. And it adds a lot of intrigue, legally speaking and procedurally speaking, because the pretrial is now supposed to be January 13th, trial March 30th of 2023, just a few short months from now. And to me, that's impossible if you think that there's another potential defendant. And if you're not even showing the probable cause affidavit. And to me, I just don't see how that is actually going to go to trial. What we know about this defendant, Allen, and the connection to the victims, he worked at a local CVS. He potentially helped them develop the photos for the funeral, gave them to the family for free, didn't charge them for them. And everybody is appalled at CVS, of course, that he could be potentially connected. Now, here's the issue with cases like this. Everybody wanted this person to be caught. Everybody wants justice for these victims. Now we have somebody that's been arrested. Swift justice is what they're looking for, potentially March 30th. We don't really know what the connection is. So we're going to find out at this trial or maybe sometime before, but we want to protect against a rush to judgment, right? We always think about that. We always talk about in these cases. So what I want to know is those of you that have messaged in, emailed in, posted on the community page about this case in Delphi, what intrigues you the most about it? What are the questions you have about it? That is where I want to try to build the content around, is what you are actually most interested in. Because to me, it seems like they have not found a lot of connections, at least obvious connections with this defendant and these potential victims. We don't know what the evidence is they have about it. And we do know that he's been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. So he is the guy, or at least one of the guys or the people that they feel is responsible and culpable for these deaths. And people want him really bad. And so to me, it's interesting in that it's taken so long and that we don't know a lot about it. But legally speaking, this isn't really a whodunit type of show and try to connect the dots and figure out who the other defendant is. This is more of an explaining the legal process, what our legal rights are, how this trial works, how this person's going to get represented, what happens in a sentencing hearing type of channel. So what I want to know is be as specific as you can as to what you want to know about this Delphi case, why you're interested in it, why you follow it, and what piques your interest about it. All right. We will be talking more about Sarah Boone, but I didn't want to talk about today because we had that Cruz stuff that popped off, so we wanted to hit that. Myra, you just missed a little bit of a discussion with Cruz. People disagreed. We amicably disagreed. Just totally fine. This is not the channel for you if you can't disagree and keep talking through things and letting your opinion known in the chat. I almost feel like the chat was 50-50 on, whether they agreed or disagreed with what I said or the judge said or the defense lawyer said or the victims. We're all on the victim side. All of us are team victim in this Nicholas Cruz case. And frankly, any real victim, as a plaintiff's lawyer who represents victims, that's always the side I'm on. So never get that confused. All right, I'm going to scroll through some of these comments. How far can they go with the media blackout with the Delphi case? Very far if it's in the interest of justice. Because the public would much rather catch all the people responsible than they would watch this trial, right? Why did it take so long to find the suspect? I would really be interested. That's why the probable cause and what connects him and what evidence they have against him is important. Did they just find something at his house? Did they find, hair or something that shouldn't be there? We just don't know a lot of those questions. So it's hard for me to kind of pontificate or speculate as to what the connection is and how they're going to get him and how they're going to put on the evidence in this trial. Yes, I'm going to talk about the OnlyFans. We've done a couple videos on the OnlyFans case. So check out that playlist. That's a very interesting case. And there's a new video out that I found pretty interesting. Yes, Spicy, it is healthy to disagree. Leanne, I disagree with myself sometimes. It's all good. That's funny. Valerie, there are stories like this on all sides. Nobody's perfect. No judge, no lawyer, no prosecutor, no public defender, no victim, no defendant. Nobody handles all this stuff perfectly, right? And we just have to understand that. That's all. That's all we're asking for, really. All right. We've got more questions here. I'm assuming most of them are Cruz, so let's hit them here before we bounce. Mark Bass, I also didn't like her response to being told the jurors were threatened. Agreed. Timber Dan, America is bloodthirsty, no decorum, no shame. That hurts. Leslie P, thank you for speaking on this. I just happened to see it. I stopped watching this trial long before. The judge did not hold up the decorum of court, did not take into account real safety concerns. Dougie D, the state is right. The defense could have objected at any time to the statements. The defense also needs to remember the families are still grieving. Absolutely. Absolutely. The defense is burdened to object. That's what they were trying to do. The judge is really shutting them down and cutting them off, which can make it difficult to object. They also don't want to be rude in the middle of the victim statement, so they're trying to figure out the right way to do it. Maybe I'm giving them a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt with that, but understood. And I think it's understandable that these, if I was them, I probably just would have taken it, if I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, I probably just would have taken it and not said anything and just left after they were done. Let them say whatever they want about me. Heather Lopez, is it punishment when this was the outcome Nicholas Cruz wanted? He pleaded for his life while he ignored the pleas of his victims. Heather, I don't know what he wanted. I know people kind of went back and forth. I always thought he wanted life based on kind of the things he said in the interviews. Other people said they thought he wanted death. So I'm not really sure, but I definitely think life in prison is punishment. I do think that. Assad, even the worst among us deserves a vigorous defense. Absolutely agree with that. AH closed her Twitter. Interesting, Raven. Mike Dorado, my heart breaks for these parents, but weren't the lawyers doing their job? If they didn't fight for their client, they should be disbarred, right? Yeah, it's malpractice if you don't fight for your client. Judy Grass, the podcast Down the Hill has a ton of good info on those cases for those that want a background. Yes, great. I'm assuming she's talking about the Delphi case. I don't have a ton of background on it. Usually I like to look at, what happens in the trial and in court. Simply Susan, how does a regular person see the probable cause docs on a case a relative has been charged with murder? Public, I don't know where you're at, Simply Susan, but a public records request. You can request it from the defense attorney on the case. If it's a public defender, you can request it from the state attorney's office. You can go down to the clerk's office at the courthouse and ask them if it is a public record, how you get it, and they can take you through the process. Rich Cat Ranch, proud of the courtesy and decorum here every day. Well, you're a part of that, Rich Cat, so thank you. Brianna, Gray Hughes has covered this case pretty in depth. There's all kinds of stuff floating around that might be part of his arrest, like a huge, CP ring. Interesting. Oof. Man, that could get dark. Ann Wolf, Max Schlatter brought up inaccuracies defense used to entice the jury. Defense did a sidebar with headphones, then came back after break saying she wanted an objection. I think that's fair game. I think if he wants to say that the defense argued inaccuracies, he wasn't really mentally ill, we think the jury got it wrong because of this, that's not personal attacks, right? Attacking the arguments and attacking the facts, I'm okay with. Carsto, Peter, I always appreciate your fairness to all sides for every case. That's why I'm subscribed. Thank you, Carsto. Jason Lewis, respectfully, I disagree with your timing of you and the defendant's team's sentiments. Simply offer the judge, the state, and the victims the same extreme level of grace you are giving the murderer. This is fair. I understand. I don't know how else I can say it, that they can say whatever they want about Nicholas Cruz, basically, who is the defendant that caused their suffering and their pain and what happened to their family members. And they can complain about the lawyers and even the jurors in a public forum, at a press conference, which they did, and we had no problem with. It's just different here. And frankly, I don't blame the victims. If I'm being honest with you, I don't blame the victims. I blame the judge. Just like if a witness were to say a hearsay statement or something inadmissible from the stand, I don't blame the witness. I blame the judge and the lawyers because they're supposed to keep the rules in place in the courtroom. So I'm not blaming the victims here. I understand why they're angry at the defense lawyers. I 100% understand why they're angry at the defense lawyers. Half of my clients hate the defense lawyers on their cases because I represent the injured victims. They hate the defense lawyers, but I don't let them spout off on them personally or take personal shots at them. It's just not appropriate. And so again, respectfully, we disagree, and that's okay, Jason. Thank you for your comment. Azam, thanks for just a simple super sticker. That's nice. And Raven Willow Dragon, thank you for yours as well. All right. We are getting to the end here of the video. This was a tough one. I understand. I appreciate everybody joining to talk about this. It's tough to talk about this case, and these victims have every right to be outraged. Go watch my other videos. If this is the first one you saw about Parkland, please go watch my other videos. Find out how I feel about Nicholas Cruz, even about how these defense attorneys acted in court. Listen to what I said about the death penalty and whether or not I felt like this was appropriate. Go check those out, is all I can say. John O'Rourke, I want to give a shout because he got me this sweet shirt from Paynes Valley. It is a Peter Millar, just beautifully comfortable, soft as can be shirt. And I want to say thank you for him. Angie Payne, I hit as many as I can. It's a lot of people in the chat. I try to hit as many questions as I can. Usually I answer like over 100 questions every live. And I have answered a lot today. Billy G, we are going to talk about Boone, just not today. Too many things popped up. I couldn't fit it in my schedule. I do have some of the videos to react to, some of the stuff to talk about. It is going to be wild when we do get there. Thank you, Asgul, for the super sticker. And yeah, and I mean, this stuff is just, it was a wild case. It was a horrible case. Everything is personal about it. Misty said, Melody Vanoy is the latest juror interviewed. Okay. Rosie, love your inclusion. Flinched at first because my husband has a medical practice, but I'm a member now and feel welcome here. Doctors are on our side on personal injury. We do medical malpractice. We work with another firm. Almost do no medical malpractice. Injury cases where doctors are usually doing surgeries to fix our clients after a car accident, a trip and fall, a catastrophic injury, a tractor falls on somebody, whatever happens, doctors are usually the witnesses on our side. They are our experts who we walk with or who we work with, who explain what happened to our client, why it happened to our client, why they need the treatment. So we love doctors and we work with doctors all the time. But I appreciate you, Rosie. And I appreciate everybody. Yeah, the plan was not to talk Cruz today, but enough of you came, shined the bat signal up, so we came to talk about Cruz today. I knew it was going to be a tough one. I knew people were going to disagree with me, but I like the cordial discussion, and I love your input, and I do understand where you're coming from, and I do agree the victims should be able to say whatever they want to say, just not in that setting specifically. I think they should be able to tell the world how they feel about all of these people because nothing is going to ever make it okay what happened to them. And just we can't at all understand what they're going through. Okay, I appreciate you guys. Until next time, I'm out of here.